Alright guys, let's take a deeper dive into the NFL lineup generator that is now available. So first of all, the generator can be used for either DraftKings or FanDuel. You switch your site up here at the top, and you can build lineups for any slate that is available on either site. So we're just going to look at the Sunday-only slate for DraftKings right now. The first thing you can do, of course, is use the manual lineup builder here. This is a lot like the screens you'll see on either site, except that we give a lot of extra information here in the player selection window, including the line, the opponent, the fantasy points allowed rank to this position for the opponent, and then the projected fantasy points, which you can customize on the weekly cheat sheet. Of course, the dollar per point values that go along with that. And then you can, of course, limit by your position, by your games, and your searches there. So you can build your lineups that way, if you want to make your cash lineup or whatever. But if you're looking to mass enter some contests, you can use the lineup generator here to get up to 150 lineups in one request. Or you can just use it to make smaller amounts, whatever your, whatever kind of contest you're entering. I'm going to try to make 10 lineups here. The first section you see is the filters. Any changes in this section, you have to remember you hit your save settings. Remember to hit the save settings button. Basically, you put in the number of lineups that you're asking for. You have a salary ceiling and a floor that you can change if you choose. You can choose which positions are allowed in the flex spot, since we're doing DraftKings. You can avoid opponents for your defense, and you can also use these drop downs to select your stack. So like if you want to stack your QB and your receiver, just set them both to 1, and that'll force a QB and receiver on the same team for every lineup. Or you could do, if you'd set it at 1 for all, you would get a QB, a running back, and a receiver all on the same team. If you're going to use the stack data, you have to really make sure your player targets make sense for it. If you don't, if you're asking for QB, wide receiver stacks, but you don't have any receivers targeted on the same team as your quarterbacks, then it's obviously not going to work. I'm going to make some lineups without stacks first, and then we'll come back to that. So this next section here is very important. It's kind of a running total section. There's a total roster spots available, which is the number of lineups you've asked for times 9. Both sites have 9 players per roster. And then the total players used is calculated based on the target percentage of all the players that you have down here. So every player that you've targeted on the cheat sheet, you have to come in here and set your requested target exposure percentage for them. They'll have defaults based on the green, yellow, and blue colors, but you can obviously manually change that. You can use this set all section to do mass updates if that'll work for you. Otherwise, you just scroll through and do each manually. But you need your total players used here to be greater than, or at least equal to, the total roster spots needed. You have to give the generator enough players to work with. This number here will be bold and red if you're too low. So if it's red, that's no good. You want to adjust your player exposure until it's not red, basically. And the next one below it is average salary used per player. As you can see right now, it's in bold red for me. On DraftKings, your average per player is 5,556 rounded up. And that's a little higher on DraftKings because they have a 60,000 cap instead of a 50,000. But we're looking at DraftKings now. You can see my number is a little bit too high. It probably still would work this way because, I'm only $4 over the average. But to really feel good about it, I'd like to get this number down in the range where it's no longer red. So what I'm going to do is, I've already kind of looked at my exposure here. I'm just going to go down. Since I don't have Winston targeted, I'm going to take out Mike Evans, so I don't have any of those stacks. And that was enough to get my average salary down below the DraftKings average. So better mix here of players. Anytime you change any of the exposure, make sure you save your settings. The exposure targets down here are not saved automatically, so you always have to save your settings. So looking at it by position, this is a little more complicated than the golf generator, since golf is the same position for every player. So for football, what we're looking for, you'll see each position has has a position total here. I'm looking at 120% for the QB right now. the way to look at this is a 1 to 100 ratio. You need 100% exposure per roster spot. So since we have one QB roster spot available, we need 100% exposure to all of the quarterbacks. I have it at 120 right now. Going a little bit over that 100 is usually good. Again, you just want to give the generator more lineups to work with, or more players to work with, to give it a better chance at success. And again, these numbers, if you go too low, like if I'm at 90, it's going to show up in red because I don't have enough players. So I bump that number back up. It's going to auto update with every change. And you just want to make sure, again, you're trying to avoid red numbers, basically. So QB is easy. Same with defense. Kicker, if you're on FanDuel, it's one position, so you need 100%. Running back and wide receiver and tight ends with DraftKings gets a little murkier because there's the flex position. So basically with running backs, you need at least 2, so you need at least 200% exposure. And you have the option to put them in your flex spot, so you could have a max of about 300 total percent for running backs. Right now I have it at 260. That's probably going to get me, about half the lineups are going to have a running back in the flex, and the rest will probably have a receiver. Scrolling down farther, you'll see the same deal for the receivers. You need at least 3 or 300%, and the most you can have is 4 or 400%. So I'm at 375 right now. That's pretty good. That should work. Tight ends, I'm at 140, so there's a little bit of leeway for a tight end to be used in the flex if I was to select the flex, the tight end option in the flex here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to save my settings. And just scroll one more time back to the bottom. You can see we have defense the same way with the total, and then we have lineup totals at the bottom. I'm looking at 1,005% right now. You need at least 900%, and again, going higher, can be good. Give the just to give the generator more options to work with, but 1,000% or so, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's good. Once I've decided on all my player exposure here, we're going to click the Generate Lineups button, and if the player exposure is set correctly, and if you have a good balance of players, you'll get your lineups back pretty quick. If it does kind of get stuck, and if it can't fill the number of lineups that you've requested, you have to really take a close look at this running total section and also at your player exposure, because usually what that means is you have too many expensive guys targeted, and it's salaries are pretty tight, at least for week 1, so you have to really make sure you have enough cheap value guys mixed in, and not too many. You can't use all the studs because you just won't be able to build valid lineups. But I got 10 lineups here, came back pretty quick. You can see over in this section over here now we have rostered total counts. So you'll see I had 120% targeted exposure of my QBs. I got 10 lineups, which is obviously the 100% we were talking about. And it'll tell you, so I got 3 with Breeze, I got 2 with Wilson, 2 with Carr, and 3 with Ty God. So that's my exposure. Maybe I don't like it. It went a little high on Ty God, probably because he's always a little bit cheaper than some of the guys I have targeted. But again, when you have more than 100% selected, it's going to kind of pick and choose among your available targets. But you can, of course, edit your lineups over here once they're generated. You just click on the lineup, and then you have it viewed here, and you can change out a player or 2. You can clear it, reset it. You can delete it if you don't like it. You can also use the color target icons here to keep track. Maybe this is the one I want to use for my cash lineup. Maybe I want to use yellow for like the 3-entry max contest or something. Maybe I want to use blue for the Millie Maker. So you can kind of classify your lineups there however you choose. Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and export your lineups to a CSV file. And all you do at that point is go to the My Lineups page on DraftKings, choose the Upload Lineups option, and then upload your CSV file. The file does not need to be edited in any way. You really don't even need to open it. Just upload it at DraftKings, and your lineups will be available on the My Lineups page. Let's take a look real quick. Let's see if we can get some stacks here. So if I wanted to stack my QB and my receiver, I'm going to go ahead and save my settings. When you're generating lineups, when you click the generate button, all lineups that are not marked with a target will be deleted. So basically these 7 that I've already marked, it's going to save. So let's see if I can get the 3 stacks On my other 3, they're going to be deleted right away. Stacks are a little bit harder to generate. Again, you have to really make sure your player exposure is set correctly. You have to make sure you have receivers available to stack with your QBs. So let's look at the 3 new ones I got here. So we're looking at a Brock Osweiler, DeAndre Hopkins stack, and it got Will Fuller in there, just a kind of a random double stack. We've got Russell Wilson with Tyler Lockett, and we've got Drew Brees with Brandon Cooks. So we got our stack lineups there. You can obviously get a little creative with the different combinations that you set up, and you ask the generator to build for you. But that's basically it. So again, we would export these lineups and then jump over to DraftKings or FanDuel and load your lineups. So if you have any trouble with the lineups, again, just really take a close look at your player exposure. It's usually too much exposure to expensive guys. You have to remember the tight pricing. And really make sure you have enough value guys to fill out your lineups. But if you do have more questions, feel free to send us a note on the Contact Us page. It helps if you include a screenshot of your filters and your player exposure. Just helps us troubleshoot the issue. But really, again, keep an eye out for red numbers. If you see red numbers in this section, your player exposure is not correctly set, so you need to make some adjustments. All right, so hopefully that covers everything. Again, if you have questions, send us a note on the Contact Us page, and good luck this season, guys. Thanks.